We're at the beginning of the third chapter of Rosh HaShanah, and somewhat unusually, we're going to finish off an issue at the beginning of the chapter. I don't understand why, although I can see that there seems to be a magic number of 9 Mishnayot per chapter, so perhaps the subject matter spilt over. And in any case, the previous chapter closed on an important issue. But the third chapter is going to begin with the conclusion of the announcement of the new moon. Ra'uhu bet din v'chol Yisrael nechraku ha'edim v'lo hispiku lomar mekudash ad shechashecha harei ze mu'ubar. Let's say that the bet din saw the new moon, and all of Israel saw the new moon, and the witnesses were examined, but there was no time left to say Mukudash. Remember, the Bet Din has to stand up and say Mukudash, Mukudash, sanctified, sanctified. There was no time to make the announcement before dark. So the month is, well, the word used is Mu'ubar, pregnant. It's actually Mu'ubar in the masculine, pregnant, i.e. it has 30 days. So we know that a month can have either 29 or 30 days. If we can't announce the new moon before the end of the 29th, before the end of the 30th day, if we can't announce before the end of the 30th day that, hey, today's the first day of the new month, then by default, it becomes the 30th day of the previous month. And the new month doesn't start till the next day. So there is a question of, there is a program that needs to be observed here. It's not about the reality, actually, of seeing the moon, but it's about the reality of when you need to make your announcement by. So the formal rules of the announcement take precedence. What if there are no witnesses? Ra'uhu ve'din bilvad, the bet din alone saw it. Well, we still need to keep the rules, right? Just as we need to keep the rules about timing, we need to keep the rules about witnesses. We need witnesses. Yamdu shnayim ve'ya'idu bifnehem. So if only the Bet Din saw it, then 2 of them will stand up and they'll act as witnesses. And then the others will accept their evidence. Ve'yomru mukudash mukudash. And then when they accept the evidence, they'll say mukudash mukudash. It's sanctified, sanctified. Ra'uhu shlosha vehen Bet Din. So 3 people saw it, and they themselves are the Bet Din. Well, what are we going to do? Because we need 3 minimum for the Bet Din, and we need 2 minimum for the witnesses. So what are we going to do? So 2 of them are going to stand up. They're going to stand up to give evidence. So then they're going to seat some colleagues with the 1 remaining judge. So they're going to pack out the bench. They're going to pack the bench with some more judges. And then the 2 who've stood up are going to testify. Ve'ya'idu bifnehem, the 2 that have stood up are going to testify in front of the new Bet Din. Ve'yomru mukudash mukudash, and they say sanctified, sanctified. She'ein hayachid ne'eman al yedei atzmo. For an individual is not trusted on his own. And this is really quite a fundamental principle. You know, even the Bet Din of Moshe and Aaron, you know, they had a Bet Din, they had 3 people. However great the individuals are, we still don't make a Bet Din with fewer than 3 people, and we don't give, unless there's very special circumstances, we don't accept evidence from fewer than 2. So that maybe what this Mishnah is emphasizing are that there are certain rules of how we operate these things, and these rules actually take precedence over the physical reality of whether they've seen the new moon or not. The process is important. And with that, we will move on to the question of blowing. And remember, one of the first psukim we learned was from Bamidbar, uvachodesh hashvi'i bechad lachodesh mikra kodesh yelachem. In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you'll have a holy convocation. Kol melechet avodah lo tasu, you don't do any work. This is Rosh HaShanah, right? And it doesn't use the words Rosh HaShanah, but it's the first day of the 7th month. Yom Teruah Yeh Lachem. It's a day of blowing the horn for you. The first day of the 7th month is a day of blowing the horn. So we need, in the second part of the Masechet, to think about blowing the horn. And the Mishnah begins. It's a very puzzling Mishnah, actually. It's an incomprehensible Mishnah. Kol hashofarot ksherin chutz mishel para, mipnei shehu keren. All shofars are kasher except for that of a cow, because it is a keren. A cow's horn apparently is called a keren. And something that's called a keren is not okay for Rosh HaShanah. Kol hashofarot ksherin chutz mishel para mipnei shehu keren. All the shofarot are kasher except for that of a cow. And Rabbi Yossi objects. Amar Rabbi Yossi, halo chol hashofarot nikru keren. Isn't every shofar called a keren? And he's going to bring a verse from Joshua. Joshua, this is, by the way, the walls of Jericho being falling down. And in Joshua, the verse says, v'haya bimshoch b'keren hayovel k'shomachem et kol hashofar. We got the word keren and we got the word shofar. It shall be at the drawing out of the ram's keren when you hear the sound of shofar. So we've got keren and shofar, which are parallel, which are identical. So we know that a keren is a shofar. So we can understand kind of Rabbi Yossi, if you like, but we still don't understand the beginning of the Mishnah. Kol hashofarot ksherin chutz mishel para. All shofars are kasher except for that of a cow. And the Gemara tries to bring various semantic explanations about the meaning of the word keren. Maybe a cow's horn is not called a keren, whereas the other horns are. Maybe that's the answer. But I think the real answer comes in the Babylonian Talmud in Rosh HaShanah, and it's given by Ulla. Now, Ulla is a traveling rabbi. Ulla is one of the guys who travels backs and forwards between the land of Israel. So he'll be going back necessarily from the Galil at this point, not from Yavne. So he'll be going backwards and forwards from the Galil to Bavel. He's a traveling rabbi. That's Ulla. And Ulla says, Hainu Tamad Rabbanan. This is the reasoning of the rabbis, and he's referring to the reasoning of the rabbis in our Mishnah. And it goes like Rav Chisda. What did Rav Chisda say? Rav Chisda says, Mipnei ma ein kohen gadol nichnas bigdei zahav lifnei lifanai velifnim la'avod avodah. For what reason does the high priest not enter lifanai velifnim? This means inside the Holy of Holies with his golden clothes to perform the service. Why can't the high priest perform the service with golden clothes? And we learned when we learned the Mishnah of Yoma that he changes his clothes. He actually changes his clothes about 5 times during the day. And when he goes into the Holy of Holies, he takes off his golden clothes and he puts on white clothes. We learned that in the Mishnah of Yoma. Why is this? Lefisha ein kategor naaseh sanegor. Because a prosecutor cannot become a defender. A prosecutor can't become a defender. What is this about being a prosecutor? Well, the gold clothes, what do they remind us of? They remind us of the idolatry of the golden calf. They made a calf out of gold. We can't have the high priest on Yom, and of course Yom Kippur. They made a calf out of gold, and the tablets were smashed. And Yom Kippur is the day that Moshe comes down from the mountain with the new tablets. So how can we possibly go into the Kodesh Kadoshim wearing gold? The Yom Kippur is the day when essentially we receive forgiveness for the gold. So we can't, we're not going to bring gold into the Holy of Holies. But along the same lines, what animal did they represent? It was a calf. It was a cow. We're not going to use a cow. on Rosh Hashanah because it reminds God of the cow, the golden calf. That's the reason of Rav Chisda, which Ulla brings, and it's an abstruse reason, but it kind of rings true. And we'll learn later in the Gemara that we actually use a ram's horn because that reminds God of the binding of Isaac, which might also have taken place, by the way, on Rosh Hashanah. And that's a much more suitable thing to remind God of at the time when he's judging us. The Mishnah is then going to go on, and this is a very puzzling Mishnah. Shofar shel Rosh HaShanah shel Yael. We've said we're going to use a ram's horn, but that's not the Mishnah. The Mishnah goes on to say, Shofar shel Rosh HaShanah shel Yael. It's not a ram's horn, it's an ibex. Shofar shel Rosh HaShanah shel Yael pashut. It's an ibex and it's straight. Ufiv mutzu pezahav, and its mouth is overlaid with gold. Ushtei chatzotzrot min hatzdadim, and there were two trumpets, one on each side of it. And we don't recognize any of this, right? I mean, none of us have walked into shul on Rosh Hashanah and found an ibex shofar overlaid with gold with two trumpets standing one on each side. And the Mishnah goes on to say, Shofar ma'arich v'chatzotzrot mekatzrot. The shofar gives a long blast, and the trumpets just give a short one, toot, toot, since shemitzvat hayom b'shofar, because the mitzvah of the day, the commandment of the day is the shofar. So the shofar goes long, and then we can hear the shofar, if you like, through the trumpets or over the trumpets. And there comes a point after the trumpet stops blowing that we can just hear the shofar, and we need to hear the shofar. So what is this about the ibex? Well, the Bartanura will give us a hint from the Gemara, Shel Yael Pashut, of an ibex straight, Di Litfila Ba'inan Pshutot. For the tefillah, we require straight ones. We need to be straight during the tefillah of Rosh HaShanah. You know, and that's an important, the halakha is not going to go according to this Mishnah, but it's a really deep and important point. For the tefillah of Rosh Hashanah, we have to be straight. We have to be, and that means straight inside, not just having a straight shofar. And then the Rambam will explain actually on his commentary a couple of Mishnayot down. But I brought the commentary now just to sort of, just not to surprise you, and we'll learn this Mishnah tomorrow. The Amar b'mash kadam, it's stated above. He's two Mishnayot ahead of us, so he's referring to our Mishnah, but he says above. Ki shofar shel Rosh Hashanah tzarich sheyu mikeren hayalim eina halacha. The statement that the shofar of Rosh Hashanah is of an ibex, this is not the halacha. And similarly, it doesn't go according to Rabbi Yehuda. We'll learn Rabbi Yehuda a bit later. Aval pasak halacha, the judgment of the halacha is sheshofar shel yovel v'shel Rosh Hashanah shel zcharim kvufim, and the halacha is that the shofar of the Jubilee and of Rosh Hashanah, there's a blowing as well on the Jubilee year, and the rabbis derive what the rabbis equate the blowing of Rosh Hashanah to the blowing of the Jubilee. And that's a Zecharim Kufim, bent males. And he's referring actually to a ram. So the Rambam is assuring us that in fact we do have bent, we have a bent shofar from a ram. And, you know, all this stuff about the trumpets and the gold, well, they did that in the temple, but we don't do that today.